So FASD is Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders. And it is a brain-based physical condition that affects the brain and body of people who were exposed to alcohol in the womb. And my personal experience with that as an adoptive mom of 5 kiddos, my husband and I have 8 kids. We have 3 biological and then 5 through adoption. And all of them experience some levels of trauma, of course. But when we brought our youngest home in 2010, and I had heard about FASD, or fetal alcohol syndrome, was common among kids adopted from Eastern Europe. So 4 of our kids are siblings that we adopted from Ukraine. They didn't all come home together. The first 3 came home in 2007, and then the last little guy came home in 2010. But to back up a little bit, we also didn't know anything about trauma when we started this journey. We had 3 biological kids, and then we welcomed into our home, we got custody of a relative, a little girl who was 8 years old, and her coming to us kept her out of foster care, but also left us without any training. Like, we did not know what we didn't know, so we didn't really understand trauma, the symptoms of trauma, the impact it would have. We just thought we were dealing with this child who had, big behaviors, and they were, rebellious, willful, disobedient kind of behaviors. So we just, consequenced and punished and did all of those things that we may do with our biological kids, but none of that ever worked. So it was a very challenging season. And then we went on to adopt internationally. We brought the first 3 kids home, still not knowing or understanding a whole lot about trauma, but had read a little bit about attachment and read a little bit about the fetal alcohol syndrome. But the kids came home and they really sort of clicked into our family. So it was sort of like, this false, sense of, we know what we're doing and we're really good at this. And then a few years later, we returned to Ukraine to adopt the youngest sibling out of that set. And the second that we met him in the orphanage, we knew we were not equipped to parent this little guy. He was only 5, and we highly suspected fetal alcohol syndrome. So by the time we got him home and we got settled and began to look for help, he did get a diagnosis, actually, the youngest 2. So the littlest one was 5 when he came, but the following year when he turned 6, and then his next older sibling was 8, they were both diagnosed by a developmental pediatrician with having fetal alcohol syndrome. And we were handed a pamphlet on ADHD and basically told, have a nice day. And there was nothing. So I went to the internet, as we all do, and we're researching and seeking answers. And, really what I found at that time was pretty hopeless. And, the information out there basically said that we were looking forward to kids that would grow up to have, be addicted to alcohol or drugs, homeless, imprisoned, or committing suicide. So we just sort of shut down the computer and decided that would not be our future, and dove into, at that time, something that we did find very helpful. And that was the Connected Parent, who I'm sure you're familiar with, Dr. Karen Purvis. I know you, you're a TBRI practitioner, I understand. And so we went through the Empowered to Connect, all of that training when Dr. Purvis was teaching that herself, and immersed ourselves in that. And that really worked. Applying all those principles, that really helped with all of our kids. And we began to recognize, they have all experienced trauma. Like, this is what's going on with everybody. There's just, varying degrees of, the behaviors that we were seeing. Not all of them were really, really hard, but the youngest guy was really, really hard. And by the time, it was working pretty well, but by the time they became teenagers, those 2 younger boys, the train was coming off the tracks. We were like, wait, we have attachment, we have connection, like, we've built trust, like, what is going on? Like, we're missing something. There's something going on. And I started to suspect it was that fetal alcohol syndrome, and then began to really look into that more closely. And by then there was a little bit more out there. So I went on to get some formal training so that I could help our family, our kids. But along the way, because I had my podcast and I was working with families already, I began to realize this affects most adoptive and foster families, and most don't even know that that's what they're dealing with, because the symptoms can be very similar to the symptoms of trauma. But when you've done all of the things to build connection and attachment and all of that, and you're still having things going on that you really can't, you just know there's something more. So I just became passionate. I wanted to be able to support and equip and encourage families who are on a similar journey, but at the same time knowing that it's not just kids in adoptive and foster placements. It's 1 in 20 school-age kids in the United States have been prenatally exposed. Most are not diagnosed, or these are kids that are diagnosed with all of the alphabet soup of diagnoses, right? They have the ADHD, ODD, PTSD, used to be a lot of RAD diagnoses. Some have the autism diagnosis, just all of those different things, which may or may not be accurate, but even if they are accurate, they most likely come under the umbrella of a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.